Hello there, my name is Anthony Barocas of IAB Communications. I'm the Chief Gearhead here, and today I want to show you a cool computer. It's actually a computer video, not a video. Cool computer you can look into getting if you are just getting into streaming or looking for a second or third system to dedicate to a specific spot like I'm doing today. It's the Alienware X51. So, what is the Alienware X51? Well, I'll get rid of this. The Alienware X51 is a series of PCs that Alienware came out with. I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this. It looks like this. This one's actually open. That's why the top looks like that. It's meant to be like a tall, thin thing. And it basically is CPU, GPU, hard drive. That's all that's in there. And then your power supply, excuse me for a moment. Your power supply is a 330 watt brick. This is, it's heavy. This is 330 watts of just power supply that powers that. Now 330 watts realistically for a desktop PC is not a whole lot. So you're really constrained. You're not going to be putting a bunch of cards in one GPU. There's one slot. That's it. There's no capture cards. There's no audio I/O and all this, it's like not putting 7 capture cards in here. This is for simple production. This is not for big things, but it's capable. This irony of ironies, I know someone who just bought a brand new 17-inch Alienware laptop with the new 3080 in it. It's basically the only way you can get a 3080 at this point, and it came with this very same power supply. So Alienware is making a killing on this power supply. Made it once, and they've been using it for almost a decade. So I have Alienware R1 or X51 R1. I have an R2 here, and I wanted to show you one of the really cool features about this thing is that it's so dense. I mean, the only thing I can think of that's more dense than the X51 is possibly this. And this is an Intel NUC. And this Intel NUC, this is the NUC 8. Yeah, this is the NUC 8. It's got 2 gigabit ports as opposed to the new one, which has just one. This is the whole computer. This is CPU and GPU. The whole bottom half of this thing is cooling. The top half is the computer. And the power supply for this, where did the power supply go? I don't know. The power supply for this vanished. It was right here a minute ago. But anyway, the power supply for this is almost the same size as this. So, but this fits nicely on a 1 rack unit of rolling rack, and then the power supply fits right next to it. So the whole thing fits on 1 RU, and it's a very capable machine. It's even got Thunderbolt 3 on here, so I can go connect to an Aja I/O box and have SDI and HDMI in and out. Very capable. Now, comparatively, the Alienware desktops don't have Thunderbolt out of the box. They don't have it, but they do have USB 3. So a Magewell converter like this, or any number of converters that are out there, will enable you to bring in HDMI, SDI, whatever you want. And I would say you could have 2 good connections. And then there's also the gigabit internet that's on these devices. So if you're using NDI with any NDI converters or pan-tilt zoom cameras with NDI built in, they will come in over the local area network. So you really don't need a capture card with NDI and USB 3. You could get a couple video inputs in here, and then the last big thing that makes this usable is remote callers, remote connections, remote desktop share, things like that. That is very prevalent in today's streaming environment. And if you want to bring in remote guests, you don't need a capture card. So that's what makes these older machines relevant today. So I have one here, and I just want to talk about what makes this, like, to me, so attractive. Let's say overhead camera. Here you go. So this, you can see, is my X51. This is the R2. The difference between the R2 and the R1, which is right over here, is this. This board, which looks like that board, but it's not that board. This board is different. This is the R1, that's the R2. And the key difference that I found in working with these machines is that this one, the R2 delivers more power to the graphics card than the R1, which is this one's over here on the R1. That comes into play when these desktop systems use a full-on desktop card. So when you want to upgrade the card, if the card needs more power than the card that came with it, then you're going to possibly have an issue. This machine, the R2, came with a 760, and as long as I stayed within the power that was demanded by the 760, I was fine. And the 1660 Ti actually is less power than the card that was in here. I just needed a different cable connector, so I ordered this. And this card fits in this machine and works beautifully. Then when I took the 760 from here and I tried to put it into the R1 over here, that's when I ended up with the problem in that it would not start up, because it turned out in the Alienware forums that the R1 delivers less power to the GPU, even though they actually have the same exact 330 watt power supply. But the CPU was more power hungry then. So hopefully by getting an R2 board and having a more powerful GPU, I don't pull more than the power supply can deliver, but we shall see. The CPU in these boxes is also accessible. And if you get, like, these are both i7s. If you were to get, if the i11 or the i7 version 11 uses less power than the one I have in here, or the R or in the R1, then you could potentially swap that out, lower the power demand on the CPU, lower the heat being generated by the CPU, and have more power available to put in a bigger GPU. And that could bode very well for you. Although I will say, in doing remote calls, I find that to be very CPU heavy. And in terms of graphics processing and doing video mixing, that's GPU heavy. So balancing your capabilities for what you're doing is going to be key. Looking again at this case, what I have here is, this is designed rather amazingly. I mean, this case is very short. It's only this deep. It's about 3.5 inches total. So this easily fits into a rack of gear. There's plenty of space on either side. I'd even have to fashion something to make up the difference. The plastics aren't really needed, and it's open mesh all the way around. Here, I have another camera here, and let's take a look in the case. So you can see over here on the bottom, it's all just open mesh, and then over here, there's one fan blowing in from the front. The front is open mesh. That's where the optical drive slot is. The top is open mesh. So you can see this thing is really designed to let a lot of air in. This is your I/O board and your RGB lighting. This is the power board that I was just talking about. And this over here with the RAM sticks, this is the main CPU board. This is the main thing. And it's got one slot, and you got to make everything work with that one slot. And of course, it's got wireless on there, and that right there is the CPU. You can see big CPU cooler, and it has this plastic shroud around it, and this grate on the back here. And over here is where the graphics card goes, and there's really no wasted space in this thing at all. You'll see, I'll put it together and I'll show you a little bit more, but there's a reason why this is designed the way it is, and there's a reason why the card that goes in here is designed the way it is. This whole thing is designed where I don't see, like I've been looking for rack mount systems for another PC I have, and the rack mount systems that I'm looking at, they're all like designed to hold like 10 hard drives. And for video professionals, we don't need 10 hard drives. Nobody needs 10 hard drives. Now that we can get 14 terabytes on one drive, we don't need 10 hard drives. But there's still, all these cases are just, nobody cares to design a new case for the type of build that we need. And these things are really designed almost like for what we're looking for. These are designed really well, and they're perfectly suited to focus on GPU, CPU, and a little bit of storage. What I've got here is, you can see this has a whopping 1 terabyte hard drive. This massive thing, it's 1 terabyte. I mean, I've got a micro SD card that's 1 terabyte. You could easily replace this with something smaller, lighter, uses less power, take out the whole tray, take out everything, and just stick it to the bottom of the case, or just drill a couple holes in it. And then over here on the optical drive caddy, this fits into the front over here. In the optical drive caddy, I've put an SSD drive just in the space that actually exists right on top of this caddy. And the builders of the Alienware actually put 3 different SATA connections in here, even though the devices only came with 2, optical and hard drive, 2 storage, but there's 3 connections. So you don't even have to do anything but add another pigtail and a power split, and I added the SSD for my startup drive, and then this one for my media. That way, when I'm writing all the media over here, that recording the show, and then anytime it needs to access, program or system, comes off of the SSD very quickly. And that's working out very, very well. You could easily replace the optical, get rid of this whole caddy, which is probably at least a pound, get rid of this thing, and just have 3 of these SSDs just taped to the bottom of the case here. That would actually even open up some airflow too. Getting back to the airflow, there's one fan here, and there's a little fan here just blowing down onto the power board. This has a shroud, but it's open, but it's not really open, because if you look at, scoot this over a little bit, if you look at the top of the case over here, you'll see that this kind of mates up when you close it with this, and it covers it. So when this air is being blown off of the CPU, it's got no place to go but out the back of the case. So air in from everywhere in the case, hot air out the back. Then the GPU is designed similarly. This doesn't have 3 fans just blowing hot air into the case and waiting for you to solve it. This is what they call a blower, and you can see, like, cool design. This blower fan sucks in air, cool air, because there's not, there's a little bit of heat here, but really there's not a lot of heat creating components other than the CPU and the GPU. Those are the biggest heat things. And it's going to suck in cooler air being pulled in right here, and it's going to blow it through all of the fins and out the back of the case. This whole right side here is just opening to expel the heat out of the case. It does not blow the heat into the case like other things. Like I just don't understand computer case design where it's like, well, I'm gonna have a big GPU and I'm just gonna blow the hot air off of the side of the GPU, and then I'm gonna have a CPU and I'm gonna blow air through it. But then it's like I had to figure out the CPU blowing, and I have to figure out the GPU blowing, and then I have to figure out the whole case blowing. Why not from the very outset say all the heat must be from any device blown out the back? So you design the CPU so it blows it out the back. You design the GPU so it blows it out the back. And then that way, you don't have to like fight with it in the case. The case is basically an open door to air from every direction. And what it does is it just lets that cool air come in and fill the case, because the devices that are creating the heat are built to expel the heat out the back of the case. They're taking this heat and just getting rid of it. And then also in terms of having this in a rack of gear, having this face out the back of the rack, I know that anywhere it's going to be pulling air in from is not going to be where the hot air is. You know, I see like home theater cases, and they have fans on the sides, but like nothing on the back. Like, are you supposed to just blow air around, hot air in the cabinet? That doesn't make sense to me. So I just love the way that they built these things, and it doesn't matter whether you get a 1, a 2, or a 3. There's 3 different versions, R1, R2, R3, that they're all going to have this same mindset in terms of build. You could even eliminate a lot of this metal, because the metal lid covers right here. So you're basically metal on metal right here. I'm going to put this piece back in right here and put this case together. So we have, let me do the optical first, because that was kind of tough to get in. Put the optical in here, and then slide it back. Who's in my way? Slide it back. Yeah, there's not a lot of extra space, so getting things in here is sometimes a little tight. And then we connect the power, and then we can, that's data. Then we connect the power, and then this locks in over here. There's one screw that goes up here. What did I do with my screwdriver? And screw that in right here. And then screw the GPU in place, and here. I mean, honestly, this, you know, because it's locked in from here, it's not really going to move, but having the whole frame locked in place reduces the stress on that one PCI slot. And then when you put the lid on and slide it back, it latches here, it latches here, 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 here. So it locks everything into place, covers this, and as you can see, there's RAM right here. There's really not a lot of extra space in here at all. The RAM, I guess, is cooled because air can come in, come across it, and then get sucked into the CPU and blown out the back. And then we tuck our little RGB cable in here, because, you know, it's a gaming machine, so it's all about RGB. And then we lock this up and slide. If you want to slide, there we go. Slide it back into place. And there should be a little black screw, because it's on the outside of a black case. And you could use a thumb screw if you wanted here, just so it's easy to get into. And we're done. This is my machine. And of course, they even made it so you can rotate this so that the alien head is vertical when you put it on your desk, and the optical drive fits in, you know, right side up. And then you've got your connections here. I've got my little Logitech keyboard, input output. These are USB 3s. And on the back of the case, they have, you've got USB 3s, super speed, USB 2s, USB 3s, audio complement, gigabit. Obviously there's HDMI on that board, but this is really where it all counts over here. And you can see this is all air being blown out. This is all air being blown out. This is actually air coming back in, and this is where the power supply comes in. So this is a very compact system. I'm really almost tempted to take all the plastics off and just take it down to the bare metal and just have a bare metal case, you know, powder coat it or whatever, and that way I could have this nice rack mountable PC. that is a nice powerhouse. But this one is going to be my main office PC, and the one that I'm retrofitting, the R1, once I get the new power board and everything works like it should, that's going to actually be dedicated to working here at this little showroom area, my work table and presentation area for creating content. And that makes it easy that I don't have to try and get another PC to work over here or connect everything all the way over to there. I just have something dedicated for here, and I can leave cameras and everything connected and just have that in place, ready to go at a moment's notice. And that's why I think these things are a good investment, actually, whether you get an R1, R2, or R3. The R3 did something really cool, did a couple things really cool. Again, same power supply, but they added NVMe. Now, as you saw on the inside of these cases, there's really not a lot of extra space to add an NVMe slot. So what they did was, on that riser that connects to the GPU, they put the NVMe on the outside of that. So it's directly coming in on the PCI, and so it's nice and fast, and you have the NVMe as well as the hard disk drive, and that is a nice advancement for the R3. There's a couple other tweaks as well that if you're looking for something and you find an NVMe, an R3 at a good price, go for that. But I think all of these, with a Core i7 and a GPU, because they are upgradable, obviously you can swap out the GPU, put in something else like I did with my R2. I put in that 1660 Ti that's replacing my 760. The 760 was okay. I sort of went past the capabilities of it a little bit, and the 1660 just gives me more. The 760 is going to go into my R1, and for doing stuff here in the studio, it's probably perfect. 3 cameras, no call-ins. I'm not doing that type of production here. I'm doing tech demos and content creation. So just being able to switch between 3 inputs and record audio and have that content just high quality, recorded, and being able to access it on my network, that is a great way to do it, and it doesn't take up a whole lot of room, and it just sits there for when I need it. And that's what I'm doing. I got 2 of these Alienware X51 sitting on my work table right now, and who knows, maybe I'll find an R3 in the near future. But that is what I wanted to relate to anyone out there who's getting into streaming or wants to add a little bit more streaming capability, or like me, wants to have something smaller but dedicated to a specific purpose. And that's where I think these things really come into play. Unfortunately, Alienware doesn't make this model anymore. There's no R4. I think it would be really cool to take this design and hone that motherboard down and make 2 NVMEs on there or something like that. Forget the hard drive completely. Just don't even have an option for it. You get rid of the optical drive and just rejigger the case a little bit so it's more on point, and see if you can even integrate a power supply. That would be super cool. And just have the same form factor, but now without the extra lump somewhere else. I mean, the downside is then this would have the weight of the power supply in it, but that's something that might be worthwhile to people who don't want to have 2 things to deal with. Just plug in their desktop and go. Anyway, this has been a quick look at my Alienware X51s. I hope this may prove useful to someone who's looking at what options are out there in terms of using older gaming systems and dedicating them to streaming production, or even, other gaming solutions. My name is Anthony Barogas, Chief Gearhead at Stream for Us and AIBA Communications. Thanks for watching.